Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. Can I just say we're here in the Grand Committee Room, which has just been recently refurbished after a long time, removing asbestos out of the roof. The only problem with the room is it's actually quite a quiet room. So if you could just speak loudly, please, because the microphones pick up everything that we say, but they don't necessarily amplify what we say. So if we could just bear that in mind. Apologies for absence.
Yeah.
Right.
Non-chair, sorry, who was required?
Elizabeth, are you doing the apologies for absence?
Yes, no apologies.
No.
Helen Simpson has sent her apologies, but there's none from the committee members.
Okay. Item 2 is the minutes of the meeting on the 23rd of February. We're happy that that was a true record of what we discussed that day. I'm seeing some nods around the table. Okay. Does anybody have any declarations of interest, please? Can't see any. And then we go to public participation, item 4, and I believe we'll have 2 speakers this afternoon. Is Councillor Mason?
Councillor Mason was unclear whether or not he would be attending, but he isn't here. So I don't know if you want me to read the question out or if you just want to provide a written response.
Yes, please, if you would, Elizabeth, then.
That's a question from North Yorkshire Councillor Steve Mason. Now that North Yorkshire Council has joined York City Council adopting the UN Sustainable Development Goals as its plan, will the combined authority do the same, particularly within its economic frame?
Rachel, I think you have an answer.
No, it's Andrew Leamy.
I've got an answer.
You have an answer.
Yes. There's 2 points I'd raise on this. Firstly, that the economic framework has been built on the strategies and plans of the 2 constituent authorities. And as part of this, the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals have been considered in this process, although they're not specifically referred to in the documents. The goals are also being looked at as part of the performance monitoring plan for the framework. And I think secondly, that in terms of a formal adoption of the UN Sustainable Development Goals by the competent authority, this will be subject to a further decision that would need to be made by the elected mayor and the combined authority members at a subsequent meeting when we develop the framework further.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. So then can I now move to the second speaker, to Gwen? And Gwen, please, I'm not quite sure where you have to sit.
Thank you, Chair. First, regarding the many constitution amendments submitted by the City of York members, I was disappointed that these detailed and lengthy proposed changes were not first considered by the now constituted Combined Authority Audit and Governance Committee, whose first meeting, which was last week, was cancelled. May I request you regularise the checks and balances here by requiring that all proposed changes to the Constitution first go through the Audit and Governance Committee. Currently, it seems any changes will be agreed between the Mayor and the 2 leaders, then rubber stamped by you here. It is a significant unnecessary risk which leaves the Mayor and authority open to abuse and governance failures by design or by chance. Next, I'm requesting the remuneration panel item be withdrawn and referred back to the panel. It is very clear that the mayoral allowance of £81,300 cannot fairly be less than the remuneration package given to the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner currently. When pension is included, her remuneration stands now at around 90k, which is just for police and fire duties. Yet our new mayor will have all these responsibilities, plus many others, but will receive less in total. How can this be right? I have written to you members in detail on multiple other issues of concern in the independent panel's report, and I note the response of the panel, which simply makes matters worse in my view. Worst of all, there is no explanation at all as to how the panel arrived at the very specific amount of £81,300. That calculation should be the minimum transparency expectation. If the recommendation is agreed today, it will leave our mayor with far more responsibilities than most, being paid amongst the least, completely unfairly. I hope you can ask the panel to review these issues or constitute a new panel and report back as soon as possible. Finally, re your Audit and Governance Committee Chair, I hope you will adopt York's good practice. I hope you will adopt York's good practice and have an opposition member chair that committee. It is an important check and balance. It is our long-standing practice in York of having an opposition member chair, not someone from the current administration. Thank you.
Well, I think you give a response to this.
Thank you. In relation to Ms Swinburne's first point regarding the Constitution and amendments, Combined Authority needed a constitution from its inception in December 2023, and this had to be formally approved as soon as was practicable. The first opportunity for any members of the Combined Authority to consider this was at the inaugural meeting of the authority on the 22nd of January. At that time, no Audit and Governance Committee was formally constituted. The Combined Authority asked that further amendments to cover additional areas for consideration be brought back to their March meeting. Nominations for Audit and Governance Committee membership have since been provided to the Combined Authority. It is proposed within the paper before members today that any further amendments to the Constitution be collated and that the Audit and Governance Committee form a working group to go through in more detail the Constitution. Envisaged that this working group will then feed into Audit and Governance Committee before final consideration by the Combined Authority. With regards Ms Swinburne's second point regarding the independent remuneration panel, it is a matter for the Combined Authority to determine whether to accept the recommendations or not. Ms Swinburne very helpfully sent over her concerns to me earlier last week, which allowed me the opportunity to consult with the panel in relation to this. They considered Ms Swinburne's comments, and whilst they were grateful for the feedback, they felt that the comments did not change their position or the content of their report. On that basis, I felt it more appropriate to allow the Combined Authority to determine whether to accept the recommendations within the report. The panel were keen to express their view that the recommended remuneration be reviewed in 12 months' time, when a definitive role and future priorities for the Mayor would be clearer. The benchmarking process looks at a variety of factors, including not just population, but also duties, including police and fire responsibilities, and the panel were mindful of the public purse when making their recommendation. Their report sets out how they arrived at the figure of 81,300 and their rationale for their conclusion. The remuneration of all police and crime commissioners across the country is set nationally in a 4-band system. The bands are also set nationally. Any uplift in remuneration, for example, pension or indexation, is a local addition, and the panel were keen to keep their starting point as the amount set nationally. The panel noted the comparison with Peterborough and Cambridgeshire and the similarity of population. However, the report does refer to the North of Tyne Combined Authority that includes a population closer to that of York and North Yorkshire, and their remuneration was set at £65,000. In relation to how the panel reached the amount of 81,300, paragraph 41 of their report sets this out. Finally, in relation to the Combined Authorities Audit and Governance Committee, whether to include this provision within the Constitution will be a matter for the Combined Authority. I will ensure that any agreed amendments arising from today's meeting and also any future amendments agreed will be reflected in the Constitution going forward.
Rachel? So if that concludes the public participation, then we'll move on. Can we now go to the Constitution review? And again, Rachel, I'll come in.
Thank you, Chair. The Constitution was adopted in January 2024 by yourselves, and it was accepted at that committee meeting in January that the Constitution may need further review. I think it suggested that those review points come back to today's meeting. There are 5 recommendations in the report today. First, to consider the feedback from City of York Council for consideration. That's within Appendix A. There is a table in green. I've highlighted in green the parts of the part 2 of the City of York Council Joint Committee's feedback. The second recommendation relates to audit and governance and the possibility of a working group being formed going forward. Third recommendation relates to officer feedback that's arisen in the course of working within the Combined Authority since January. The fourth recommendation relates to Part 9, which is police and crime, and also fire governance documentation, which can be found in Appendix B. And the fifth recommendation relates to a delegation to the interim monitoring officer between now and the next meeting of the Combined Authority for any amendments to the Constitution, if there are any questions or queries around safe and legal of the Constitution going forward during that period. I'll take each recommendation in turn now. So first of all, in relation to recommendation 1, Appendix A is at page 17 onwards. There is a table within Appendix A and I've put a third column within the table with any comments that I may have. So any proposals that we want to put forward to yourselves. There are a lot of proposals that Audit and Governance review a lot of the feedback that City of York Council have provided to the Combined Authority. However, if I can just take you through 7 areas of feedback. So first of all, within Part 1 of the Constitution, under the column reference, Section E, paragraph 1, there was a proposal to replace the word usually with ordinarily in relation to how often the Combined Authority meet. Next, again in Part 1 of the Constitution, Section K, paragraph 3B, within my comments, I put some proposed wording to make that sentence a little bit more user-friendly in relation to contracts exceeding £50,000. Next, within Part 3 of the Constitution, paragraph 6.10a, I'm proposing that we delete that sentence because it relates to a policing and crime function of the Commissioner, so not a fire and rescue function. Next, at the bottom of that page, Part 4, paragraph 2.1, the third bullet point relates to, at the moment, it reads, for co-opted members who are independent persons. I've considered the assurance framework when looking at this proposed amendment, and the assurance framework of the Combined Authority provides that there will be one independent person on audit and governance. So I think this is a typo from the template that we used. Next, on the table, page 20, in relation to Part 5 of the Constitution, the general point, where meeting papers are restricted and not publicly available, a description of the contents of the papers must be published as part of the agenda. I think that's pretty standard within local authorities and combined authorities alike. Towards the bottom of page 20, Part 6, the general comment regarding reference to Audit Committee should be revised to read Audit and Governance Committee. And finally, within this table at page 25, Section 7, so it's Part 6, the Contract Procedure Rules, paragraph 7.1.1 relates to the Official Journal of the European Union. There's a proposal to delete that reference on the basis that UK are no longer required to follow the rules outlined by the OJEU. So that is the table, and that deals with the first recommendation.
So let's just open it up for discussion at that point. I mean, we've all read these papers, so we don't need to go through them line by line, but does anybody have any comments that they want to make on this first recommendation about Appendix A? Yep, it says recommendations. Okay, we'll come back to the recommendation in due course. I'd like to move on then to 12.2, please.
Thank you. So as I've already outlined, proposing that we take that the amendments to the Constitution in 2 phases. So phase 1 would be any decisions that you make today around changes to the current Constitution that was published in January. Phase 2 would be that you ask Audit and Governance Committee to form a working group, and that be work in progress, that they take forward the feedback from a range of sources, officers, members of the public, and that they consider section by section the Constitution. That would then feed into the Audit and Governance Committee, which then will feed into yourselves for the final determination of the Constitution.
So any comments, please, on 12.2?
Next, related to officer feedback, there is a table within the report at page 11. I think it starts at the bottom of page 10, but the main substance of the report, the table is within page 11. So I'll briefly take you through those different sections. So first of all, this is in part 1, the proposed amendment by the interim section 73 officer related to the internal auditors in Veritao. So the police, crime and fire and rescue functions use RSM as their internal auditors, but the combined authority use Veritao. So what we're seeking today is that the interim director of resources and section 73 officer can have delegated authority in order to appoint from one of those internal auditors a head of internal audit.
Gareth,
I think I ought to declare an interest. I think I'm a director.
yeah, you're an unpaid director. Okay, so any further comment or discussion on that? So carry on then, please, Rachel.
Next also relates to section I and officers. There's a proposal to insert paragraph 7. I don't know whether you want me to read paragraph 7 out to you. It's there within the table. It relates to policing, fire and crime, and it just harmonises the combined authority elements of the Constitution and part 9. So it just marries those together and matches those together. Next, section K relates to finance, contracts and legal matters. And it's just the insertion of 1.1, which relates to the management of the combined authority's financial affairs, that it will be in accordance with the financial procedures. Next, part 3, there's several elements to this. So first of all, 6.6, the mayor setting the fire and rescue element of the general precept after consultation with the public of North Yorkshire, the police, fire and crime panel and chief fire officer. Policing precept is set separately. Next, section D, deletion of subparagraphs C and D on the basis that the local auditor for fire and rescue will be the same as appointed for the combined authority. Section E is next, paragraph 2. Insertion of paragraph 2.1, which relates to delegations to all chief officers. Then paragraph E, 3.13, delegations to head of paid service. And delegation to the section 73 officer. Next, an amendment to part 5, rules of procedure, and that's paragraphs 6.1, which relates to the annual meeting of the combined authority being held in June on a date and time determined by the combined authority. And 6.2 relates to ordinary meetings of the combined authority. I think it was more specific in terms of times of the month and days of the week and dates, and the proposition to make it a little bit more generic and general assists with busy diaries, especially because you're both members of constituent authorities as well as the combined authority as well. Finally, a proposed amendment in relation to the Code of Corporate Governance. So 8.7 would be an amendment to provide for an independent audit committee in relation to the mayor's police and crime functions.
Just a question about part 3, section B1, section 6. 6.6 says the mayor will set the fire and rescue element of the general precept after consultation with the public of North Yorkshire. Can you tell me why York doesn't appear on there as well, please?
Certainly include York and North Yorkshire.
Is that what it should?
Should be.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Any further questions? Anything from you, Gareth?
No.
No? Okay. So again, back to you, Rachel, please.
Next relates to part 9, which is the police and crime functions and fire and rescue governance documentation. Since the report was written, there have been a few amendments to part 9. It's a different version of part 9 that's before yourselves today. Just to summarise what those amendments are, we didn't had aimed to have the police and crime and the fire and rescue functions and services who are coming in on the 7th of May all operate into the combined authority financial regulations and also the combined authority contract procedure rules. However, due to the short amount of time that we've had to work this constitution and to make sure that we can operate on a safe and legal basis, we just haven't had the time to do that. Therefore, we're proposing that the current OPFCC financial regulations and contract procedure rules are inserted into part 9. So from day one, in order to ensure they're safe and legal, they will operate to their existing regulations and procedure rules with those regards. Next, there were some initial delegations in relation to fire and rescue functions. They have been taken out and replaced with fire and rescue functions that are currently in existence within the framework of the OPFCC. And they tend to sit more comfortably with moving over as much as we possibly can on the 7th of May. So that's why that amendment has been made. In terms of part 9, it's in several sections. So there is an introduction, statement of corporate governance, the Mayor's PCC schedule of consent and scheme of delegation, as I've said, the financial regulations, contract procedure rules, and also within the appendices, there are terms of reference for the executive board, which currently runs within the OPFCC, and also the audit committees of both fire and policing and crime.
Okay. Anybody got any comments on this part of the report?
No.
No. Okay, so Rachel.
Final recommendation, yes, final recommendation is a delegation to the interim monitoring officer. It's an emergency measure. It's something where something arises that's not foreseen and there's a question around safe and legal. So if we get into the 8th or 9th of May, for example, something arises and it's not covered within part 9 or within the main body of the combined authority constitution, that there would be this delegation with consultation with the 2 lead members of each of the constituent authorities in order to make changes to the constitution from today until the next meeting of the combined authority, in order that we could operate on a safe and legal basis, on the basis also that there will be a report come back to the next combined authority meeting, which we're hoping will be end of May, beginning of June, in order to report any amendments that have been made.
Thank you, Rachel. Barry, I think you...
Just to add with what's being said at the moment. So the combined authority is obviously in existence, has its own constitution and is operating as of now. The big change after the mayoral election on the 7th of May is that the commissioner functions will transfer across. The constitution that you have before you tries to make sure all of those arrangements go through smoothly. This provision allows officers from the Commissioner's office and the combined authority to work together and making sure that if there are anything else that we need to get right prior to the 7th of May, so there's a smooth landing, the changes can be made on a constitutional basis. And the checks and balances are in there to make sure that any of those changes will be consulted with the constituent members and if it happens after the 7th of May with the Mayor as well and reported back. It's just that you can only land it once and we want to make sure that we land it appropriately as well. So there's a bit of flexibility asked with regards to this provision.
Thank you, Barry. So could I just ask colleagues, anybody want to make any comments, ask questions on 12.5? No? In which case now we'll come back to the recommendations, which we've paused at each one to see if there was any comments. I think the first thing I would like to say, there's an enormous amount of work gone into this. And so thank you to those people with legal minds who have addressed this. I am relieved that we're going to ask a working group be set up of the Audit and Governance Committee, and that they will be charged with actually going through it with a fine tooth comb. So how do we want to handle this, colleagues? Are we happy to actually approve these 5 recommendations en bloc? Yeah. Okay, so and then in the usual fashion, can we just show that our agreement? Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you. Can we now move on to item 6, please, which is report of the remuneration panel. And Rachel, I think I'm coming back to you again.
So sorry, it's me again. Okay, I'll just find the pages. Okay, so members will recall in January that they approved the appointment of an independent remuneration panel in order to consider remuneration for the mayor, the deputy mayor, if there were to be one, deputy mayor for policing and crime, if there is to be one, and independent persons on audit and governance committee. The IRP were made up of 2 members from North Yorkshire Council and 2 members from City of York Council. Panel members, not member members. The report of the independent remuneration panel is at Appendix A, which is attached to my report, which is page 95 onwards. They made a decision quite early due to the short time scale. They had to make a determination to break it down into 2 phases. So they've conducted and concluded, and their report relates to phase 1, which is remuneration for the mayor. They're now going to start work on phase 2, which relates to remuneration for the deputy mayor, police and crime, and the independent persons. Their report, as I say, set out from page 95 onwards. They've made 3 recommendations that are before the combined authority today. Recommendation 1 relates to the setting of the mayor's remuneration, which they have recommended be set at 81,300. Recommendation 2 relates to expenses, so travel, subsistence expenses. And recommendation 3, they felt it was really important because this is a new and evolving role that it be reviewed in 12 months' time. So they're recommending that the combined authority approve that they can consider it again in 12 months' time.
Okay, so I'll open that up for discussion. I think it's important to say that we should thank the panel for actually coming together quite quickly. We did think it was of great importance that all candidates knew exactly what the terms of the allowances were before they signed their candidate papers. Achieving that. So I'll just open it up for discussion, please. Please.
I'd just like to raise the issue of under recommendation to expenses, and within there is mentioned air travel. I'd like to suggest that we put a tighter rule around air travel, because in my view there would be very exceptional and limited cases where that may be needed, say for some economic development reason, may be acceptable, but general air travel wouldn't. So I'd like to suggest that we have wording along the lines of air travel approved only in exceptional circumstances and in agreement with the lead members of the combined authority.
Okay, is that seconded?
Yep, second.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So, anybody else want to come in? Gareth?
Yeah, if I can, I'll just reiterate the point. I was very keen that this is an open salary, so as you've already stated, so each and every candidate knows exactly what they are signing up to should they put themselves forward. I hear what the public speaker said earlier, that she regarded it as unfair. I am confident the reasoning behind that mayoral remuneration as outlined by the independent panel. What would be not fair is for us to leave it, refer it back, and the mayor gets elected without any idea of what that salary is. That is the big unfairness. I'd also say that I've always subscribed to the notion that provided a panel comes forward with recommendations that are not at the extremes, we should basically be minded to follow them. Otherwise, it makes a farce of the system. I think, as it happens, they've got it about right. I'm particularly pleased that the remuneration is below that of a member of parliament, because as much as some people would like to big this role up, I'm being careful how I put this, the demands on the mayor in York and North Yorkshire in terms of their personal space and time cannot be equated to that of a member of parliament, given the travel and the effect on the family life, etc., etc. So I'm pleased that's pegged below that. That may well change in 12 months' time, and the independent panel may well review that. Just one question, though, if I can, Rachel. When is it likely that the remuneration for the two deputy mayors is likely to come forward? Because, of course, an incoming mayor may well want to offer those positions to folk, and I think that's they should know, on the same principle of openness and transparency, what's expected. There's no discretion by the mayor for those roles, is there?
Yep.
It will be set by the combined authority.
Yeah, so the remuneration panel are going to reconvene imminently. I'm on a few days holiday this week, but next week we're going to pick it up again, and we're going to start to look at the other three roles as well within the remit that you recommended in January.
So what you're saying is we should expect some sort of decision or recommendation.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah, for the next meeting. Yeah.
Anybody else want to come in on this?
Just to say that I agree with Gareth. I think it's important that candidates do know what they are signing up to, and the independent remuneration panel is the way to do it, and we should accept their evidence and reasoning, and I'm happy to support their proposals.
Okay, so can we agree all three recommendations then, please? With the air travel. So again, can we show in the usual fashion?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But this
Nick Edwards, if that's okay, just to deliver the report. Thank you.
So it's you, Nick.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. And I will be brief. Are only for noting. You'll recall at the inaugural meeting of the Combined Authority, members approved the initial budget for the functions that transferred across to the Combined Authority on the 1st of February. Following the election of the mayor in May, the Combined Authority will become a mayoral Combined Authority, with the new mayor also taking responsibilities for the function of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. The Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner has already approved the budget for 24-25 as part of a comprehensive medium-term financial plan and capital plan for both policing and fire and rescue. Those budgets will transfer across to the mayoral Combined Authority unchanged. It's therefore bringing this report to the Combined Authority for you just to note the comprehensive budget in advance of the transfer of those functions on the 7th of May. Thank you, Chair.
the people online hear us or not?
Great.
Touch the microphone and turn it off.
It's
Back.
It's come back again now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. They all went off, I think.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So yeah, this just sets out an interim corporate plan for the combined authority. We understand that the mayor will arrive in May once elected and want to do a full strategic review, both of the economic side of the combined authority and the police, fire and crime. However, we felt it was important to set out a plan at that time. So what the mayor inherited was an organisation with a clear plan of what it was statutorily obligated to deliver, what it would contractual commitments to deliver, and also other commitments that were made with as part of the devolution deal. So the purpose of the corporate plan is just to set out, if you like, what we've got on the books at the moment, what we're committed to deliver, and also the finances and investment that goes alongside of that. I will add that within the financial tables that is within the corporate plan, there are a number of assumptions around decisions government will make at the next comprehensive spending review. So government operates in what's called comprehensive spending periods, which are 4 years. The current period ends in March 2025. So the government will obviously be announcing another one going forwards. With the general election being due, it's unclear exactly when that will be. However, we have made a series of assumptions on funding streams that have historically kept going that we anticipate will keep going beyond the next spending review period. We've also made the assumption, members will be aware that approximately £380 million was announced for the region as part of the local transport fund. We have been advised by the Department for Transport that that will be backloaded, so it'll be relatively low in the first 2 years, but then will be significantly increased in future years. So we've made some assumptions around levels of investment in years 24, 25 and 25, 26. And then the final 5 years, we've spread the remaining balance over those 5 years in an equal term. So obviously that shows that the mayor will invest quite significant amounts of money over the period. In fact, it's in excess of £600 million will be invested by the combined authority over the mayor's first period. But this sets out and also some of the organisational goals and challenges and objectives facing the organisation in the coming years. And it's just for approval by the combined authority.
Thank you, James. Can I open it for any discussion, please? Which case, Pete, please.
Yeah, and thanks, James. Thanks for the report. Just to be clear, in paragraph 4.2, where we've got the assumptions all the way up to 3130, that's exactly what they are. Is assumptions.
Yes.
When can we expect some clarity on that?
We're expecting clarity from the Department for Transport in the coming weeks. Certainly before the mayoral election, but we expect it before the end of the financial year, so in the next couple of weeks. But we've been told the first couple of years will be low, similar to HS2. So this budget has come from the HS2 funding that was there. So similar to what the profile was for HS2 funding, it'll be low for the first few years and then it will go up. So we've just, if you like, made some assumptions around what that might look like.
That might change.
Yes, absolutely.
No further discussion, then can we just approve the interim corporate plan? And of course, it'll be interesting once the mayor's elected when we have that further discussion about how valid our assumptions have been in that plan. Okay, so happy to approve it. Yeah. Okay. So James, I think it's you again, is it?
Well, I'm just going to introduce Andrew Leeming, who's my head of strategy, who's developed the economic framework. Just to present this paper, please. Thank you.
Andrew, please.
Yep. So this follows a previous paper to the joint committee prior to the combined authority, which set out a draft economic framework with the aim of setting out some initial priorities and helping to steer the early days of the combined authority, but obviously always with the caveat that this would be fully reviewed once the mayor was elected. So this paper follows that initial draft, following various different consultations and further discussions with partners. And the paper itself sets out that full version of the economic framework to be approved by this combined authority as our framework going forward. I'm not. It's as it's set out in the paper, so I'm not going to go through each of the objectives and the themes. I think we've been through this previously, so I'll just present it now. That's okay.
Andrew, anybody got any comments on this then, please? I think we've seen this so often I could do it in my sleep. Claire, please.
Yeah, can I just ask you, Andrew, it has been seen by numerous committees and bodies of people. Can you just give us a sense of the general feeling around, sense of appropriateness, etc.?
Yeah.
Very briefly.
Yeah. I think generally the overall feeling of the three ambitions is very well supported across those partners and stakeholders that we've discussed it with. In terms of the eighth, there's been some little movement around some of that, some more emphasis on affordable housing. I think it came in, some more emphasis around health and well-being has been a key part. I think was particularly something that came through the consultation. I think some more focus around what the green economy was about in terms of its focus, and a little bit around what the sectors were within the sort of core sectors supported by the economy side of things, business side of things. Other than that, I think that's where the general views were, and that's what we've generally picked up within the revised document.
Else? No. Okay, well, again, we're being asked to approve the framework. It'll be fascinating to see how the manifestos align to this when the manifestos are published. But in that case, can we just approve the framework, please? Yeah. Okay, let's move on to item 10, is it now? Yeah, adult education budget. And James, I'll pass back over to Andrew again for that one, please.
Yeah, so this is really a report setting out the next steps for the adult education budget that's devolved to the combined authority, primarily a bit more about of the timing of needing to submit some information to the Department for Education. As part of the process of devolution, we have to submit what we call a readiness report in May, and it doesn't really align with the next the next committee meetings of the combined authority. Therefore, we're seeking sort of delegation to submit that initial draft into the Department for Education, and then following that, we would then report back to next combined authority meeting with that version for any further amends. So the Department for Education are quite happy for us to make further amends if we need to, following it coming back, but we just need to submit something by May. As the report sets out, the adult education budget could be worth around about £11 million per annum. We have to produce a skills plan and a strategy and a number of key documents, which will hopefully get us into a position where we can commence and be responsible and deliver AEB by August 2025. So this is really the first stage of getting the readiness submitted.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open this for discussion. I think there's a terminology change we need to make in here. But it says with the mayor or the co-chairs. I think that should be lead members, not co-chairs. If we could just change that. So, Pete, please.
Also, the LEP gets referenced in the so that's something we need to change as well. Paragraph 4.1. But overall, I mean, this is just an assurance framework, isn't it? It's kind of in place the means by which we can start to draw down some money. So yeah.
There's a decision here because we're being recommended to delegate authority. So can we have a show of hands for all in agreement of that, please? Okay, thank you. And now, item 11, the authority assurance framework. Paul, am I coming to you for this? Or?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll not go through this report in detail because it's the third time that members have had this in front of you. First was at the Joint Committee back in December 23, and then again at the inaugural meeting on the 22nd of January. As you'll recall from that meeting, members, we sought a delegated authority to the interim head of paid service to undertake any supplementary changes that might be required from the government review process. This report is brought today because that process has concluded, the necessary changes have been made and a final draft was agreed with government, which led to the first issuing of funds on the 1st of March to the tune, I think, of £9 million. So although a draft version has been agreed, in the interest of transparency and openness, I thought it would be appropriate to bring it to this forum to have it formally endorsed once again. So the report's as submitted, Chair, but seeking a decision from members to endorse this final draft.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody got any comments on this? We're happy to endorse it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's endorsed. Thank you. Item 12, Sarah, I'm coming to you, please.
Thank you. Yep, so the report sets out one recommendation, which is to ask you to agree to the proposed discretions policy, which is at the appendix attached. And that relates to the local team and the them enabling the organisation to make a number of discretions in relation to the organisation. We would normally ask for this to be reviewed on a kind of 3-year basis, but given that we've got colleagues joining from the Office of Police, Fire and Crime and the Fire Service in May, we're proposing to review that sooner. So yeah, it's just to look and agree at the one recommendation there, please.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, am I right in assuming that this doesn't apply to the mayor themselves? Can you explain, or whoever's relevant in the room, to explain how pensionable income works for the?
So the report does confirm at point 1 in the introduction that the policy does exclude council members and the mayor. I don't know if Rich, if you want to add to that.
Paragraph 47 of the Independent Remuneration Panel report that was the previous agenda item does make reference to this, but pension is not included in, so it doesn't cover the mayor.
Can I just start a clarification? I'd like a legal terminology on this. Is the mayor's income pensionable or not? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Gareth.
Just for perhaps lay members, what we're saying then is, even if we as a combined authority wish to, which I don't, by the way, to allow a mayor to go into the local government pension scheme, we are not able to do so legally. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further comments on this? Yes, we're being asked to agree to the proposed discretions policy. Can we have a formal show on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Forward plan. Paula, you're doing the forward plan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, as submitted, not a lot to add to the version that you have in the agenda pack. What I would say is that the current version as submitted was a snapshot at the time it was published, which takes us up to June 24. There are a host of other decisions that are waiting in the wings that need to be updated onto the forward plan that will be picked up in the coming weeks, coming out of the corporate plan and directorate plans that are being worked on by officers at the moment. The question for members at the moment is the next meeting is programmed in for the 28th of June, which is the date we have agreed in the calendar for the annual general meeting. That would be the first formal meeting after the May election. And the question is, would you like to move that forward perhaps to the end of May, beginning of June, to hold a meeting sooner to the election rather than leave potentially a 7 or 8 week gap?
That makes a lot of sense if you can find space in our diaries.
Shall we agree to perhaps delegate that to the monitoring officer in consultation with members then to find an agreeable date?
Yeah. Happy to have it brought forward. As I say, finding space in the diary might be difficult. Over to you, Rachel. Claire, did you want to?
I'm just on that. Absolutely, I think we need an earlier meeting and support the request. But can we do it immediately, please, rather than leaving it, because that will become more and more difficult for all of us, I think, the longer it's left.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Pete.
And obviously the sort of the falling off of the forward plan reflects the fact that we are waiting for a mayor. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the work that you've done, all the officers in the room, in laying the grounds. I know people have been working on it extremely hard for a long time now, and I think we have got it good and ready to go when this mayor arrives, so that they can hit the ground running. And I trust they will be very grateful to us all when they do arrive. So, well done, everybody.
Enthusiastic.
I'm very enthusiastic. So well done. My thanks really to everybody for all the work that you've done to get us to this position, because we're in a really healthy position going into the elections. Thanks.
I think we can all agree with that sentiment. Thank you. And it'll be so nice once we stop doing processy things and actually get on doing things.
Yeah.
But we need that election out of the way first. So that's done the forward plan. Urgent business I haven't notified of anything. Does anybody have any other business that they want to raise this afternoon? No? Okay, so with that, I'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you for your attendance and contributions.
Thank you.